Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. It's Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks taking a bit of a breather today with the little net change once again for the major averages as the market took in a better than expected reading on inflation this morning. This after a U.S.-China plan emerged from that big meeting in London between top trade representatives for the U.S. And China. The Dow came in for a closing loss of 1 point, settling at 42,866. The S&P 500 down 16.5 at 6,022, and the Nasdaq down nearly 100 at 19,616. Both the S&P and Nasdaq started the day near record highs amid optimism about potential trade deals down the line. Ahead of the opening bell today, the markets did get the news of this U.S.-China framework agreement, as they're calling it, to get the Geneva tariff truce back on track. I'll discuss the latest developments on the U.S.-China trade front later this hour with China expert Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. On the inflation number, we did get that better than expected reading from the May Consumer Price Index ahead of the opening bell. It looks like consumer inflation was up 0.1% month over month, according to that report, and the so-called core rate of inflation, which takes out food and energy, rose 2.8% over the past year, matching April's rate. All of this is going to be a big focus of attention when the Federal Reserve meets next week, June 18th. We'll be getting a decision on interest rates and a statement on the economy, and it looks like odds of a September interest rate cut increased following the release of that inflation number out today. Speaking of inflation, all of a sudden oil has shot higher today. Crude oil futures close to $69 a barrel today on reports that the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is preparing for a partial evacuation amid security threats there. That was the initial report that got the price of oil shooting higher. Crude had also rallied earlier after President Trump said the U.S. had reached a trade deal with China. That was also bullish for the price of oil. Treasury Secretary Bessent on Capitol Hill telling lawmakers he would like to stay in the Treasury Secretary spot until 2029, but did not dismiss the possibility of becoming the next chair of the Federal Reserve. We're watching all of these developments very, very closely, of course, and of course, watching what's happening in downtown Los Angeles following several nights of unrest there, and hopefully it'll be a peaceful night. Stay tuned to 790 KBC for the very latest on what's happening. Tesla widely expected to roll out its first robo-taxi program in a U.S. city this week. That would be Austin, Texas, but it looks like that has now been delayed. We'll take a closer look at Tesla stock here. Big Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce 2025 Business Expo underway in Pomona today, and Dr. Antonia Novella, who served as the 14th U.S. Surgeon General of the United States from 1990 to 1993, first woman and first Hispanic American to serve as Surgeon General. She just gave a keynote speech there at this big business conference, and she'll be joining us live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, veteran market strategist Michael FARR, Chief Market Strategist at Hightower Advisors, also president of the D.C. investment advisory firm FARR, Miller & Washington. Michael FARR, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Frank, always a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. And just listening to the first, 7 minutes of your program this evening, I think you learn a lot. What a great introduction and recap of what happened today.
Thank you very much, Michael FARR, for that. And it's been a while since we've chatted behind live microphones, so I've been eager to reconnect with you. It's been quite a year here. We're almost mid-June already. It's hard to believe that. Give us your observations of how this has all played out so far this year and where we stand here today.
It's been a tariffs on, tariffs off. It's been a policy-driven market with a whole lot of policy-driven volatility. And here we are, Frank. It's felt like at least a couple of years, I think, here in the first 5 months so far in 2025. Now in June, we have stock market trading still near all-time highs, still over 6,000 for the S&P 500. We're back into positive territory for most of the Magnificent Seven. We've seen something of a melt up from the broader market. We've seen a lot of the balance sheets look pretty good, but in spite of I think messages from the administration hearing that perhaps we're not going to have any more problems with tariffs. I don't believe him, frankly, myself. Lutnick says we're not going to change anything more about our trade position with China. Well, I don't believe that for a second. So as policy changes, volatility continues. At the fish market, Frank, the rule is that you ignore the yelling and the screaming and you pay attention to the price of fish. That's more important advice than I think you can have anywhere else as an investor in the markets today. Pay attention to the price of fish. The price of fish, ladies and gentlemen, isn't cheap. Stocks are pretty fully valued. Interest rates are holding. All eyes are on the Fed. And while a lot of the inflationary data are seeming a bit tamer, tariffs and the impact of them and these policy changes can change a lot of it very quickly, and the Fed will have to be very nimble. Things are looking good for a September cut, but not necessarily. September's a very long time away.
Absolutely right. Given the rapid-fire headlines we get on a daily basis, we're on the air live with veteran market strategist Michael FARR, chief market strategist at Hightower Advisors, and also president of the D.C. investment advisory firm FARR Miller and Washington. Taking a look at the action here related to the precious metals lately, silver has broken out to a 13-year high here. Platinum above 1,250, and gold has been touching record highs. Got above 3,500 not too long ago. Right now, hovering just below 3,400 an ounce. And palladium, which we don't often cite, at 1,082 here. What are your thoughts here about the precious metals taking off recently?
Well, it's a couple of things. I think with precious metals, there's always something very mysterious, first of all, about the pricing of precious metals. Trying to understand the price of gold has always been a mystery, even to the most veteran among us. But it does represent a fear trade, a safety trade, and an inflation trade all in one. If you expect inflation, then the price of gold will go higher. Therefore, you buy it knowing that it's going to go higher, basically with inflation. And the currency used to buy gold actually becomes worth less. The same ounce of gold is going to cost you more. So there's the inflation there. The other thing is it's a flight to safety. It's a fear trade. When people worry, they say, well, I can always have my gold coins. I can always leave them in the safe. People will always take gold when they won't take my credit card or something else. That's an old found belief going back to when we were on a gold standard, but still internationally, gold can be safe. Same with silver, though it's been more volatile. So basically, a little bit of safety trade, a little bit of inflation trade, and then there's a lot of scratching my head trade when it comes to precious metals.
All right, we got so-called analog gold, and now so-called digital gold. On this program, we certainly talk to the biggest fans of crypto, as well as the harshest critics, as well as the observers. And what are your thoughts about how crypto has evolved here, with the Bitcoin also kissing record highs this year, and it's held it pretty well recently at around 108,535 here at last check. It got up to right about 112,000 not too long ago, and Ethereum also saw a bounce back. What are your thoughts about the cryptos, and are you doing anything there?
Whether you love crypto or whether you hate crypto, I think it's here to stay. And certainly crypto has the support of this administration. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Crypto is here to say it's just very hard to understand because there is no intrinsic value. It is worth only what the next person will pay you for it, period. That's it. So it's not backed by fiat, meaning it's not backed by a promise of a government anywhere, and it's not backed by any hard metal, gold, oil, anything like that. So you're really believing that there is some scarcity to it and that people will want it and will accept it for trade. May or may not be true. Very speculative and very hard for an investor to say they're investing in something that doesn't have an intrinsic value. Now, it does have a use. It does have a use, even though it doesn't have an intrinsic value, so we can imply value. And that use, of course, is for commerce, and it's fairly widely accepted. While Bitcoin has done very well, Ethereum, which arguably has some stronger structural fundamentals within the blockchain structure of Ethereum, hasn't been as popular, hasn't done as well, is still well lagging from its highs, whereas Bitcoin's making new highs. I don't claim to understand a whole lot more of these things. I have studied and understand the blockchain process and why this stuff works. I just don't know much more what to make of it. I can't invest in it on behalf of clients. I own a little bit of it myself to try and figure out what it's going to do next, but it's really more of an experiment to make sure that I understand how the stuff works than it is any faith that I have that it's going to go higher or make me money someday.
On the air live with veteran market strategist Michael FARR here on 790 KBC, and you got a front row seat there in Washington with all this budget drama playing out, as well as this big beautiful bill drama playing out. What buzz are you picking up on how this is going to play out, and is it indeed going to go through?
The word in Washington, Frank, is that it will go through, but not easily, and it's going to be ugly. This is going to be a lot more sausage making, and the word in Washington is don't look for anything until August or September, when we basically have to run out of funding. We have to increase the debt limit. It's going to get jammed up in Congress, and then it will ultimately get through and will cost, a fair amount more money and add more money to the debt, but it looks like it will get through. Currently, that's what people believe. But if you think that September is a long time away for a Fed meeting, August is an eternity in politics. And the gamesmanship that goes on in Capitol Hill and the nasty levels it's reached, something I've never seen before in my life. I went to high school on Capitol Hill, Frank. I used to get dropped off on the far side of Capitol Hill, and I'd walk past the Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Capitol Building, the Union Station, the Senate Office Building. And as a high school kid, I just thought, oh, this is a long damn walk. Even then, though, it was majestic and beautiful. But Washington hasn't felt like this during my entire lifetime. By the way, it's been 50 years since I was in high school. So when I tell you that I have some context over this opinion, I really do. Mike Johnson is in a very precarious position, and I believe someone said that he was doing a high wire act across the Grand Canyon walking on dental floss. It is that precarious as the Speaker's job right now to get this bill passed for the President.
You've given us several quotes. We quote the quotable here, Michael FARR. So thanks for saying what you've said so far here today. And you've watched the drama play out between President Trump and Elon Musk as well. That big falling out and the Doge process and all of that, and also how Tesla stock has been impacted. It also fell off the Mag 7 list. Right, it was replaced by Broadcom. What are your observations about that whole drama, and what about Tesla stock at this point?
I think the real rule lesson here for anyone, even the richest man in the world, cannot fight the President of the United States. It's a power and a piggy bank that is really inconceivably large. And while Elon Musk has enormous power himself, and certainly the power of the pocketbook, he can't take on the president, which tells you that pretty much no one can take on the office of the President of the United States and the power that wields. So will they come to a truce? Will they get something done? Did Musk actually come up with cost savings? Yes. Did he do it in a chaotic, I guess, meat-fisted, meat-hand kind of way, ham-handed way? Yes, he did. Is there another side of fiscal responsibility in Washington? Doesn't seem to be a lot. And this is a problem within the Republican Party right now. There are fiscal conservatives who are very much against this big, beautiful bill because it does add to deficit spending and it will add to the debt. And fiscally conservative Republicans are saying, we've got to stop this and we can't do it. There are even some fiscally conservative Democrats saying that we can't do it. We can't, Frank, as just sensible people, we can't keep borrowing money and borrowing money and borrowing money to fund more borrowing. Right now, we have over $1 trillion in payments to pay the debt. This is a big deal. I mean, this is huge. So, and the interest on the debt is larger than the Defense Department budget now. And if interest rates go up, of course, it's going to be more unaffordable. So at some point, we have to say, hey, stop it. We're just going to hand this big debt bill to our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they're going to ask why. What did we do with their money? And we're borrowing it from them. We're borrowing it from the future. We're going to give them the bill.
On the Air Live with Michael Farr. Given all that, do you see any unusual canaries in the coal mine here? And what do you see ahead for this economy and for the overall market, for that matter?
The odd part is that the economy is doing okay. I mean, growth, the inflation numbers are slowing. The economy, we've had a blip, of course, in the first quarter in terms of GDP growth and other things. But I think we have a positive year for GDP growth. I don't think we probably go into recession, though if tariffs really surge their heads again, we could. We could end up in a policy-driven recession. But for right now, the economy is okay. The employment numbers are strong. As we've looked at that inflation data you so clearly quoted and explained in your first segment, wage gains have been slightly ahead of inflation. So without this wage inflation spiral upwards, we now are seeing some wage increases that are staying ahead of inflation, which means the average American is able to afford a little bit more lifestyle than they were before. This is a good thing. The economy's doing okay. The consumer's hanging in there. Nothing's awful right now, but the policy volatility can change it very quickly. And by the way, there are a whole lot of us not involved in politics in Washington, D.C. We do our businesses, live our lives, do our jobs, and our hearts and our prayers go to our great fellow Americans in California. We do feel for you. We hate the violence and what you're going through and having to endure. So please know that your fellow regular Americans have you in our hearts and in our prayers.
God bless you for that, Michael, and appreciate it very much. Before we let you off the hook, I have to ask you the big question we ask on this program, and that is any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
I have taken some opportunities to add when things were lower. I have taken advantage of the volatility, and in certain, I will tell you, certain of the Magnificent Seven, I did add. I'm not actively adding now, though I am looking at one healthcare company right now to add. I think the fundamentals are still very strong. The stock price is down, and I think they've got a lot of potential. I probably only make 4 or 5 trades all year long. I hold things for a long time. I think that time in the market and not timing the market will make you money. One of my favorite pieces of advice is don't just do something, sit there. And that will indeed make you more money than thinking you're going to outsmart the next entrance point or exit point. Finding that really good company with strong and expanding fundamentals, buying it at a reasonable price, and then holding it long enough so that management and the market can actually realize the value that you saw so that it can continue to produce those earnings and reduce that debt and expand market share and allow you as an investor to make money. That's the trick, and that's what you can do with patience and dispassionate discipline over time.
Fantastic, Michael. Well, thank you very much for sharing your valuable insights with us. As always, I hope to do this more often with you. We'll be looking for you on the major networks and your writings as well. Michael Farr, veteran market strategist, chief market strategist at Hightower Advisors, also president of the D.C. investment advisory firm Farr, Miller & Washington. Michael, it's been fantastic to speak with you here. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Always great being with you, Frank. Thank you, and your audience. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And we go out to the freeways now, 790 KBC.
Expert entrepreneur Ed Milet is on a mission to max out your life.
We're throwing open the metaphorical closet doors of our lives. We're going to be cleaning out the closet. What no longer fits? Audit some of your relationships. How about auditing your emotions? Maybe it's your career you need to look at. Get your life together for this season.
The Ed Milet Show.
It's time for a little cleaning of the soul. Let's get a little ruthless, a little refreshing, and a little real. God bless you, everyone.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. The Dow slipping 1 point at the bell today at 42,866. The S&P 500 down 16.5 at 6,022. And the NASDAQ down 99 at 19,616. Pretty muted reaction to the big news today of some trade development between the U.S. and China and that two-day meeting they held in London. And also the inflation number, the consumer price index, came in better than most analysts had expected. But there are concerns now about the price of oil spiking, given what's happening in Iraq and the U.S. Embassy there, the focus of attention. Price of oil moving higher, just shy of $69 a barrel all of a sudden in New York. The price of gold up as well at $41 at $3,384 and change. Silver up to $36.42 an ounce. Platinum also on the rise at $1,250 an ounce, and palladium at $1,082 an ounce. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, pulling back $1.12 today at $142 and change. Apple down nearly $4 at $198 and change, and Tesla moving higher slightly by 34 cents at $326.43. Checking the cryptos now, Bitcoin at 108,535, Ethereum at 2,769, Doge at 19 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here at 790 KBC. Good afternoon. Talks aimed at cooling tensions between the U.S. and China have ended in a deal, so says President Trump. BBC reporting this. He said China had agreed to supply U.S. companies with magnets and rare earth metals, while the U.S. would walk back its threats to revoke visas of Chinese students. All this following days of intense talks in London and to resolve conflicts that had emerged since the two sides agreed to a truce in May after a rapid escalation of tariffs had nearly paralyzed trade between the world's two largest economies. President Trump writing on his media platform, Truth Social, today, our deal with China is done, subject to final approval from President Xi and me. Joining us live now with reaction, China expert Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He's also active on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, always great to have you with us here. Give us your reaction to the big news here.
The big news may not be as big as it actually has been portrayed as. Yesterday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said, look, we have a handshake on a framework. That doesn't sound like an actual deal. Now, when President Trump says that it's subject to the approval of both Xi Jinping and himself, it also suggests that there are items that were negotiated in London which were beyond the instructions of both the American and the Chinese negotiators. So we'll see what pops out of this. But right now, a framework does not seem to be a deal in itself.
On there live with China expert Gordon Chang. So it was a limited nature, this announcement, right? So there are quite a few questions still about what's ahead here. So this is coming in the midst of the other pause, right? With the larger framework, I guess, the larger deal to come. What do you expect after this 90-day pause ends?
I expect more trade friction because there are fundamental differences between China and the United States, and those differences aren't going to go away, even if there is a temporary accommodation. So, for instance, Xi Jinping does not believe in consumption as the only sustainable basis for the Chinese economy, as everybody else thinks, which means he's going to try to export more to the world, which is going to cause even more trade friction, not only with the United States, but with others. And the issue is whether he is going to stop the theft of U.S. intellectual property, which it doesn't appear that he will. So these are issues that are going to continue. And by the way, all of these trade talks are going on while the Chinese are engaged in what appears to be a biological weapons attack against our farms and ranches, with bringing in these fungus and other biological agents, as well as trying to plant invasive species in our country. So, no, I don't think we're going to have trade peace for quite some time.
That situation you referenced with the fungus or fungi, I guess. What do we need to know about those recent arrests?
Well, they're not isolated. The problem is we go back to 2020. Americans in all 50 states received seeds from China unsolicited. That's occurred this year as well, as Border Patrol has seized seeds. And Temu, the online Chinese retailer, has been caught sending seeds to Americans unsolicited. This appears to be an attempt to plant invasive species in our country. And this, again, is another attack on U.S. agriculture. So, yes, we've got to make sure that we view all of these in the context of each other, which suggests that China is continuing to go after our farmers and our ranchers.
All of these moves being made on the chessboard. Maybe you can bottom line it for us here, which of course business people are trying to get a handle on here now. As far where do we stand with tariffs related to China? I guess some of the announcements brought down the tariff from 145% to 30%. Where do we stand here now, and what is your expectation on how this tariff war will play out ultimately?
Well, President Trump said that the tariff rate agreed to in London is 55% on Chinese goods coming into the U.S. and 10% on American goods going into China. That is part of that temporary arrangement, which needs approval from both sides. But, there are other things that are part of that deal, and we don't know what they are, so we won't really know and have a good idea until we see later. But ultimately, because the fundamental differences remain, I don't see peace in the tariff war. And President Trump probably at some point is going to be pushed into higher tariffs. Remember, we had a deal on May 12th. The Chinese violated it already. So, I don't see how we have changed the dynamics. Have we really convinced Xi Jinping to honor his trade promises to the U.S. as he's violated them throughout his tenure? I don't think so.
That seed situation, we're going to see higher tariffs on seeds, hopefully, at least, right?
Yes, that would be great. 1,000% tariffs on seeds would be fantastic, but that's probably not going to happen. What we will see, though, is greater enforcement at our borders and maybe increased scrutiny of packages arriving from China.
Yep. So outfits like Temu and what's the other big one?
CHANG. SHEIN.
Yeah, that's right. And are Americans going to continue to get those kind of bargains here?
Well, I don't think so, because President Trump moved against the de minimis exemption of $800. Now, that exemption removal is subject to court challenge, because that was done under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. As we all know, a district court, the U.S. Trade Court, has declared that President Trump exceeded his authority under that provision with respect to the de minimis exemption, among other things. So, this is going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the decision of the Supreme Court on this will be historic, because it will define the power of a president to protect the country in times of emergency.
Anything else top of mind that you've been putting out on NX today, Gordon Chang?
The thing that I'm concerned about is we're hearing reports, all unconfirmed, that Israel is striking Iran's nuclear sites. What we do know is that the United States is now removing non-essential personnel and dependents from its facilities, not only in the Gulf, but in areas adjacent to the Gulf, which is an indication that the United States believes that diplomacy has come to an end. So whether these rumors about ongoing strikes against Iran are true or not, it looks like that's the direction that eventually Israel will take.
We'll continue to watch that closely with you and our audience. China expert Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, author of numerous books on China, including his latest Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, and on X, very active at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Out to the freeways we go now on 790 KBC.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Inside the opening 45 seconds. What a goal!
Jack McGlynn with that cannon of a left foot.
Never miss a game.
What a start for the United States.
Shot for distance. What a goal!
Never miss a moment.
Exquisite from the San Diegan.
Can he finish? Yes, he can! Yeah!
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Big gathering in Pomona today. The Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce 2025 Business Expo is underway. The LA Latino Chamber of Commerce urging small business across the Los Angeles area to come together and flex their economic power to connect, network, and learn more about how to have access to opportunities in the government and other opportunities at the 2025 Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce event, which is sponsored, by the way, by City National Bank. So big gathering of bankers and Latino business folks there, and about 2,000, as a matter of fact, Latino business owners and more than 100 exhibitors are presenting at that conference today. And among the speakers there today, a trailblazing American leader, Dr. ANTONIA Novella, who is the first woman and first Hispanic U.S. Surgeon General of the United States, was appointed Surgeon General by President George H.W. Bush, beginning her tenure back in March of 1990. And she was appointed to the temporary rank of Vice Admiral at the time in the regular Corps, while the Surgeon General. She was the first woman and first Hispanic to hold that position. She just delivered a keynote speech at that conference, and we're hoping to get her on the line here any moment now. So stay tuned. The Honorable Dr. Antonio Novello will hopefully be joining us here in just a few moments. In the meantime, let's take another look at what happened with the markets today, coming off that conversation just now with Gordon Chang, the China expert, on this framework agreement that was reached in London between the U.S. and China. Looks like tariffs now put at 55%, given this latest development, according to President Trump's announcement on social media. In reaction, not much on Wall Street anyway. The Dow pulled back 1 point today at 42,866. The S&P 500 down 16.5 at 6,022. And the NASDAQ down just about 100 points at 19,616. The price of oil back in the spotlight today, moving higher, close to $69 a barrel, up 49 cents here at the moment at $68.64 a barrel. As tensions in the Middle East continue to rise, including concern about the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. The price of gold, meanwhile, moving higher, up more than $40 at $3,384 and change. Silver has been popping lately, hitting a 13-year high, right now at $36.42 an ounce, up another 15 cents. Taking a look at platinum, it's at $1,250 right now. It's made a big move on the upside, was below $1,000 not too long ago. Pulling back actually $9.60 here at the moment, $1,250, and palladium pulling back $10 at $1,082.50 an ounce. Delighted to say now, following her keynote speech, joining us live now is the Honorable Dr. Antonio Novello, first woman and first Hispanic Surgeon General of the United States, appointed by Surgeon General by President George H.W. Bush back in 1990. Also served in the Clinton administration too. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
What was your message to the business conference there this afternoon?
Well, the message was a little bit positive with regards to the economic of the Hispanic group, and it seems like we're really now dealing with millions and trillions when in using the gross national product made by the Hispanics to increase the economic value of the American economy as well. And I have a feeling sometimes people do not know these details. So this is why when I was invited by Daryl and by Anna, I was able to just get together all the information that had to be economically feasible to show them that we are not an invisible force anymore. We really produce for this country, and more than anything, in the millions. And even more important, we pay close to $250 million in taxes. every single year. So that information is extremely important so that we stop being invisible and that people start paying attention that we produce a great amount of money for the economy of the United States. And sometimes you have to be in meetings like this to be able to tell people, specifically the members of the chambers that were here from all over California.
That's wonderful. I'm elated to speak with you. Welcome to Southern California, and I'm sure everyone at the LA Latino Chamber of Commerce and all the other chambers represented there are elated. You have such an inspirational personal story, too, and I know you wrote about your life's experience. Your book is From an Unexpected Life of Service, and maybe you can just share with us your amazing story and the inspiration that it will provide to this audience.
Well, the most important thing, I believe, sickness is not a reason not to be successful. And sometimes we like to feel that we cannot do what we can equal to the people who are healthy. So I think the book at the end shows you that in spite of everything, if you want to get there, you are going to do it. And that's why I had so many complications and so many surgeries until the age of 21. And then it's almost like everything was taken care of, and then you fly. But more than anything, you cannot get to the promised land unless you have an education. And in that sense, I think the book puts it that way. But in some of the lessons learned through all this work in my life, the first one that I learned basically is when you get to a very important job, you have to be prepared for it, because sometimes even your friends become jealous of your successes. And so you have to be strong enough to know that that might happen, because most of your friends like to always remember you with the previous job title, not with the big one that you have today. It's just human nature. The other thing that I thought it was even more important is that the one who double crosses you is always the one closest to you. And that's why you have to be very sensitive to the people that you work with, do fun with it, because somewhere along the way somebody's going to be so much against you that you may not be able to notice it, but there will be harm for you and your persona in the long term if you really don't choose well. But one of the things that I thought it was more interesting is through all those years, some of the things that I really remember is when someone said, karma never forgets your address. So that makes me feel good that if anyone does you any harm somewhere along the way, the universe...
Doctor, thank you very much. Doctor, thank you very much for sharing that with us here, and we hope to have more time with you next time. That is Dr. Antonio Novello, the former Surgeon General of the United States, who gave the keynote speech at the LA Latino Chamber of Commerce event this afternoon in Pomona. Live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Inside the opening 45 seconds. What a goal!
Jack McGlynn with that cannon of a left foot.
Never miss a game.
What a start for the United States.
Shot for distance. What a goal!
Never miss a moment.
Exquisite from the San Diegan.
Can he finish? Yes, he can! Yeah!
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.